Are you ready, kids? Get your parents' permission, check your mailbox, and grab your shopping cart. It's time for the Adventures in Collecting podcast.
I'm Erik.
And I'm Dave. Welcome to Adventures in Collecting, where we talk toy news, culture, and hauls,
along with our journeys as collectors. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Adventures in Collecting.
Hey, everyone.
Dave, we're back, and of course we're back with another guest at this point. We're just gonna keep that ball rolling.
Keep the guests coming. It's awesome.
And the timing of this one really could not be any better. Coming off of an insane Comic-Con at home, another year of a virtual Comic-Con. Today, Dave, we're joined by a guest that is very important to both of us and both of our collections, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, Mattel is one of the world's leaders in toys, producing toys and collectibles for everything from Barbie and Jurassic World to Hot Wheels, Fisher-Price, and of course, Masters of the Universe. But we're here today to step into the 7-inch scale squared circle to talk all things WWE. Joining us today on the show is the Global Brand Marketing Manager for action figures at Mattel and member of the WWE Elite Squad. Welcome to Adventures in Collecting, Steve Ozer.
Hey guys, what's up? Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
The pleasure is ours. Thank you so much for carving out some time to join us after what we're sure was a crazy week for you.
A whirlwind.
Yeah, wild week. Live Comic-Cons are a beast to organize and execute, but somehow a virtual Comic-Con is, you multiply that effort times 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have a captive audience almost like 24/7 for nearly a week straight, so...
Yeah, lots of info to share, lots of excitement, communicating. I mean, in a virtual setting, now you're doing this through social media and on the forums and in Facebook groups instead of in person. So, exciting times still. And I'm glad, we were able to execute, a fun set of reveals and really, bring people something that they're used to annually and make sure to keep that going until we can do that in person again, hopefully next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed that.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully by the fall we'll be good to go for New York Comic-Con if everything goes well. But before we jump into all of those reveals that we just alluded to, before we start, we ask all of our guests, what are you currently collecting?
What am I not collecting would be the easier question to answer. Of course, WWE. It's the line I work on, but even if I wasn't working on it, I would be all in or practically all in on that. Marvel Legends, Masters of the Universe, Origins, and Revelations, former classics collector for Motu, and I think I have a complete collection of that. What else? Star Wars Black Series, Super 7, Ultimates. If it's a beloved property of like the 80s or 90s, there's a chance I dabble in it.
It seems to be the running trend when we've asked that question the past few times has been we might have to alter it to what are you not collecting? That is
Yeah.
There's so much good stuff right now, right? It's like you have this nostalgia boom. I thought we were already in a nostalgia boom, but it's just accelerated so much. And then, the resurgence of some of these brands like G.I. Joe is back. And you have, both Hasbro and Super 7 doing G.I. Joe product and others on top of that. There's just so much available to us. And it's like, not only are we revisiting like the form factors and styles of, our childhoods, but you're also getting them upgraded in ways, with modern articulation, and DIJ deco on their faces. So there's so many options. Even if you just want to hone in on one of those brands or one of those collections, there's still like so much variety to choose from, just on one brand alone.
Speaking of the brand, tell us about how you got to Mattel and more about your role.
Well, I I won't go all the way back, right? I've told the story a couple times, but you know, it was always a goal to try to get into Mattel and work on the WWE brand specifically. Um, but I was working for Coca-Cola doing marketing for them on a few different brands. I took care of some of the Southeast markets in the U.S. And then an opportunity came to transfer to California to work for Zico Coconut Water under the Coca-Cola umbrella. And their offices were located in El Segundo, literally right down the street from Mattel. So I jumped at the opportunity, you know, to take the transfer, move and handle Zico Coconut Water out here on the West Coast. And then just like, you know, I was already networking. I just amped it up, you know, being here in California now. And, you know, I would have, you know, pipe dream, right, to try to make it to the exact job on the exact brand that I wanted. So I would have been happy doing, you know, any toy company, any brand, any entertainment company. But I crossed paths with Dave Jackson, who is one of the marketing managers now over at Jazzwares for AEW. But at the time, he was one of the managers on the Mattel line for WWE. He briefly jumped ship to Zico Coconut Water just long enough to form a little bit of a wrestling fan bond, and we kept in contact. He went back to Mattel, back to WWE. And then on his way out, he asked me, "Hey, you know, I'm leaving. There may be an opportunity. Would you be interested in interviewing?" And I mean, of course, yes, absolutely, yes. And you know, long story short, I convinced them I was the guy for the job, and here we are. I guess almost 4 years later in the fall. And you know, dream come true. So grateful. So grateful to be in the position that I'm in, and representing, you know, all you guys, all you collectors on the inside.
And in your role, so what does your role entail for the line?
So, you know, as the marketing manager, and, you know, I usually say this, marketing manager, I think might be a little bit of a deceiving title. There is marketing involved, of course. But, you know, we're really like running the business itself, right? So we're making sure we're hitting our financial targets. We're structuring the line. We're working with retail partners, you know, more running the business aspect of things to make sure that the line, you know, is profitable, and, you know, product is coming in at cost. It's being delivered on time to retail partners, you know, things of that nature. So that's the heaviest lift, is really just making sure the ship stays afloat.
Now, jumping right into the Comic-Con stuff, because there is a lot to talk about.
Lots of stuff.
The Ultimate Edition New Generation Arena announcement was really a great way to kick off Comic-Con as part of the Mattel Creations website relaunch, and you know, all of the other fun little reveals they had sprinkled out throughout the week leading into Comic-Con. What led the team to choosing this as the first WWE crowdfunding project?
Well, you guys might remember we showed a larger, more modern entrance stage a few years ago at WrestleMania Access and at San Diego Comic-Con. That got some really positive reception from the audience. Like, when are you going to do this? You know, can we have this? Lots of requests. We also showed a little diorama version of the neon entrance at both WrestleMania Access and San Diego Comic-Con, and got similar reactions. So, you know, for years since those things were first shown, we've been doing exploratory work on trying to make this a reality. You know, finally, obviously, Mattel Creations is a thing now. You know, that was a long time in the works. So, you know, we were kind of dual pathing the development of that new generation arena in anticipation of the launch of Mattel Creations. As far as like honing in on the new gen arena and that entrance itself, it just seemed like, you know, the perfect way to go out of the gate, because it was, you know, literally the end of the golden era. So you still had, you know, there's footage and memories of some of our favorite like golden era stars like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair going through that neon entrance. And that just like led into the true new generation era, where you've got, you know, Bret Hart, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, you know, making their memorable entrances through that new gen neon entrance. That plus the ring, like, lots of demand for a properly scaled ring. So we didn't just want to, put out the old ring again, which, I mean, we had two collector scale rings, but the scale was slightly off on both of them. So we wanted to revamp the scale and plus it up with like unprecedented details, like the wood planks and all the details on the girders of the ring, to really just present something completely new and fresh, and something you can really anchor your collection with.
Yeah, the wood planks was the thing that it really kind of for me stuck out as like this is such a kind of if you know detail that I don't think I would have ever anticipated seeing in figure form. So to see something like that just was really kind of amped up the idea for me of like this is unbelievable.
Plus, watching you and in that initial launch video, the one that aired shortly after the actual announcement of the project, watching you and Bill, like walk through the ring and like having it in front of you, like it was clear that like the passion and the thought that went into this thing was there. I mean, like you guys looked like kids in a candy store with it, like frankly.
I mean, full credit to Bill for the details of that ring. I mean, all those things, he was the one who said, I want to do this, right? If we're going to do a ring again, this is how I want to do it. I mean, the scale thing was me really, but as far as like the details thing, that was all Bill. So, really a team effort, coming together, ideas coming together. I wanted to make sure it was in scale. Bill wanted to make sure that the visuals were all there. And, there's lots of playability too. I mean, a lot of us are adult collectors. A lot of your listeners are probably adult collectors, but we still pose and take, Instagram photos and the whole 9 yards. So that just adds like a whole other plethora of options for whatever type of collector you are.
Yeah, I mean, I have to figure that the as somebody who dabbles in toy photography, the toy photography community must be like excited for this. The photographers that are taking those upper echelon pictures where it's like they have the full arena setups and they're hanging guys by fishing line and editing it out in Photoshop. Like now you have the opportunity to access a ring that has been featured across, frankly, like multi-platform media, right? Like it's been in video games, it's been in pay-per-views, it's been on Monday Night Raw, and like that fan edit of the sizzle reel with that classic Raw intro is just everything.
Oh yeah. I mean, and those Instagram photographers, action figure photographers, have been some of the most vocal supporters of this crowdfund. I mean, not only do they know that by something like this being successful, that it blows the doors wide open for future executions, and sky can be the limit, depending on the level of success we're looking at here. But I mean, those guys, it's like they're just probably just salivating at the thought of like, oh man, we can have Terry Funk pile driving Junkyard Dog on the wood planks because he pulled the mat back, and ramming someone's shoulder into the framework of the ring, and all those great entrance pictures. So they're seeing the full potential of this item. And I think for collectors who might not want to pose so much or do photography, they're looking at that neon entrance as like, that's like a centerpiece for your display. Turn that thing on with the lights off in the room, and that would be amazing.
Now, with the light up entrance, that has multiple settings, right? There's like a solid light on. There's like dancing lights.
Oh yeah. There's at least 6, but I think a lot more settings on there. So yes, you can go solid and have all lights on at the same time. And then there are just several patterns you can cycle through. Some are that are true to content, and then some all new patterns that are just like visually really cool and work well with the entrance itself. So tons of options in the light up feature on that entranceway.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense too, because I think back of watching Raw or Superstars when I was younger and seeing like the lights go to theme music and things like that. So that for me is just another amazing detail for it. Um, and of course, Doink and the ring skirts and all that stuff. But we've seen this increased focus on the Ultimate line with the New Generation Arena. The fan takeover figures, Sergeant Slaughter. We saw Batista announced at Comic-Con, and Undertaker and Kane. Can we continue to expect to see more output from Ultimate Edition moving forward?
I think you will. The line has really taken off in popularity. I mean, it was popular from the get go because this is another item that was catered towards your action figure photographer. So you can really recreate every single moment because you've got your posable entrance gear and the increased articulation and the whole 9 yards. And as of late, and maybe it was because a lot of us were home and had more time to play with toys or whatever. But the line has really become very coveted. And for a while there, earlier this year, you couldn't find anything like Hulk Hogan and Fiend and Randy Savage and Edge just all like disappeared from retail almost immediately. So yeah, I think given its the extra popularity that it's seeing, you're going to slowly see it expand a little bit more over time as long as it sustains this demand.
Dave brought up one of the reveals being that Kane Ultimate figure. The cape, man. It's like a legend, and now it's an action figure form.
I mean, when we talked about this line, we knew that we had to have some heavy hitters in here, and Kane and Undertaker were in play since the very beginning. And it did take a little while to get to them, mostly because their tooling is so unique to them. And, we had to wait for a moment in time where we could completely tool them correctly. New boots, new torsos, all that stuff. But when we talked about Kane, we knew he had to have the cape. Like, how do you make, we're talking about a line with posable entrance gear, and all that stuff. Like, Kane needed the legendary cape that we only saw in most likely those one or two photos that are on the internet.
And speaking of things that are from the past that are making a comeback, another thing that you guys announced at Comic-Con was how we're going to see retros again. So they've made their triumphant return. What went into the decision to bring this retro line back, and how do you go about selecting what superstars you're going to include and what actions they're going to use, what action features?
Well, let me just say, you might have to remind me as I start to ramble here about the first part of the question, about parts 2 and 3 of it. So if I veer off topic or forget those two, remind me. But as far as bringing them back, when we were planning that final year, and we work a year to 2 years out. So when we were planning that final year, we did get word early on that they probably weren't going to make it. So there was a different marketing manager who was handling that line at the time. And truly, I overstepped my boundaries. And I became very demanding of what we needed to include. Not that I got my absolute way on things, but I needed to make sure we got that diesel out, right? I needed to make sure legends were better represented if that truly was going to be the end of the line. As we reached its end at retail, and we had, basically the announcement coming that it was going to, come to an end, we knew we wanted to bring it back in a significant and sustainable way. So, we made sure to say that it was going on hiatus, and we started to already plan its comeback. So really ever since, just about before that Comic-Con where, I think we announced WWE Masters and Retros went on hiatus, like I had been working on a plan to bring it back where it could live forever. And as long as fans demanded it, like truly. So we knew that had to be online somehow, right? Because then, you're worrying a little bit less about, planogram and, a retailer, maybe just deciding it's time to switch it up and go with something fresh and new. So fortunately, Mattel Creations once again was being developed, an overall strategy, was coming together on what that was going to be. So we earmarked, Retro's return for the larger launch of Mattel Creations, when brands started to have a little bit more presence on there. And I mean, here we are, years of work, years of, financial planning and creative planning and strategic planning, and retros are on the verge of, getting back into your hands.
So part two of that question was, how did you decide which particular, in this case, the four that you're launching with, and those four, how do you go about in general deciding what action features you're going to give them?
Okay. So it is a little complicated when you talk about lineup selections, and I won't talk too much about it to not bore the listeners, but you have to consider tooling considerations, contract availability, if a particular talent has approval rights themselves, or if WWE has approval rights, deco balance between the wave. There's so many factors that you have to that come into play when creating a lineup, aside from just picking the coolest names, right? So we did want to theme these a little bit, not like a true, hardcore theme that we have to stick to, but it is nice to get four figures that kind of complement each other if these are going to be a bundle. So, we wanted to do something, more early WWE generation, when we started to hone in on tooling allocation and deco needs and all that stuff. So we had access to Mr. T, so we thought that would be a great addition. And I'll give you some breaking news. It was originally going to be Mr. T and Hulk Hogan instead of Mean Gene, along with Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob. But we had a little bit of a hiccup with using Hulkster here in the moment. But obviously, no issues after that, because we have Hogan figures, in the pipeline now. But we had to get moving on somebody else. So I think it's a fortunate thing, because now we have new suited characters in retros, because we pivoted to Mean Gene Okerlund. So that allowed us to create that new body, that new suited body, which I think you can imagine what the possibilities of using that suited body in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So another thing I wanted to point out is we wanted to make sure we stuck to legendary talent, because I think that was kind of what slowed down the momentum of the line. Originally was maybe the inclusion of too many modern talents. And the balance was off there between what that particular fan base wanted and what was being presented in some of those waves. So we're being very cognizant of that now. We want this to be Legends focused, at least out of the gate. It doesn't mean if this does really well and the demand is there, that we can't add some modern superstars, but at least the first few waves that you see will be Legends focused, and hitting the different eras. I think we'd like to keep some sort of theming going, make sure we hit golden era, and make sure new generation is represented, because that's kind of when the line ended originally.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these legends have been missing from our collection, so it's good to see that those are going to be, those legends are going to be coming into all these different lines.
Oh, you know what? I remembered the last part is your action feature question. So let's talk about a couple action features. Gene, obviously there were questions on Gene being a suited character. Does he have an action feature? He does. You lift his arm up and he drops the mic down to do an interview. Cowboy Bob, we know he had the loaded cast, and I know the cast deco was on the wrong arm. But he was known for giving that forearm with the cast, so he has like a forearm action. Piper, I believe Bill mentioned this maybe on the ringside Q&A, that he gave Piper that particular look and body to accommodate the kilt, so he would have a removable kilt. And then Mr. T, I think we all remember the famous photo of him delivering the airplane spin at WrestleMania 1. So we gave him the old Texas Tornado action of complete spin around. So you can put a figure on his shoulders and he can do an airplane spin. So we want to, do things that make sense for the particular superstars.
Now, while we're talking about action features too, clearly you have a plethora of action features that were in those original, Hasbro figures back in the day that people know so fondly. Do you think there's a possibility of creating new action features for maybe, figures that, maybe a talent that has a particular move set or something signature that maybe can be completed in a simple action, but maybe something that hasn't been done yet?
Totally. I know that Cesar, who was a development partner of ours, he created the reverse clothesline action for the Ric Flair chop, and the loose elbow joint, so the arm will actually flick back and perform the chop. The kick, that Sheamus and a few others shared. I think that was a new action for us, that forward kick and the backward kick for Shawn Michaels super kick. So I think you will see more of those as time goes by, if there's an appropriate superstar maneuver that we can do. And I think there's still some moves left from the original line that we haven't done yet. And one that we almost did if things would have worked out. We did have a WCW Goldberg planned, just on paper. But when we were talking about that final year of the line, we were trying to get a WCW Goldberg in, and he would have had a perfect Plex style move to replicate the jackhammer.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
That's awesome.
Maybe someday though, now that it's back.
We've seen some amazing Comic-Con exclusives over the years, and they represent the legends. Like we've been hearing about legends coming into retros and back to the elites, and throughout all the lines. Some great characters like Shockmaster, the Slim Jim Macho Man, Mr. T, and this year's Sergeant Slaughter. So what goes into the process of selecting who's going to be the Comic-Con exclusive, and just the amazing presentation that these releases have had?
Oh, well, first of all, hats off to our packaging team, who, the talent choice is imperative, especially now, but they are just doing home run after home run for like the last 3 years on packaging, especially the last 3 years, not to discount what came before. But as far as talent goes, I think with Slim Jim Macho Man, we finally cracked the code of what a WWE Comic-Con exclusive needs to be, because you have to remember that, everyone does these Comic-Con items, and it's a PR driving item for the various brands, no matter what company you are. Like, these are the items that you produce that are going to get, the larger pop culture audience's eyes on the product. So when we did that Slim Jim Macho Man, like, boy did that work. Like, everyone who was an action figure fan, anyone who had any interest in Comic-Con, like, knew about that item. And we just wanted to continue that momentum and that formula. And fortunately, due to the success of Macho Man, we were able to work with WWE and secure the rights for Mr. T. So another, home run execution. And that basically backed us into a corner, right? 2 back-to-back home run figures. Oh crap. Now what do we do? Sadly, we weren't able to get a new talent signed in time, to go into the development process of a new figure. But I think it worked out for the best, because, Sarge really does fit the bill. Like, he's a pop culture icon that is recognized, way beyond WWE. And then, once again, talking about the packaging team, they developed packaging that, like, was synonymous with 80s toys and tugged at the heartstrings of, anyone who grew up in that era. And I think the combination of those two things, with the nods to, the Sergeant Slaughter mail away figure from the late 80s, all that stuff tied in one nice little package gave us another successful and talked about Comic-Con item.
And how does it feel to be featured on the packaging of one of your toys?
It's an honor, right? Like, I collected the original LJN line a couple years ago. The Major Brothers and their artist created a poster that was similar, and they were nice enough to feature me and Bill and Rob. And our packaging team had this idea. They said, let's put the team and some of the WWE team in the crowd. So yeah, definitely an honor, and I'll keep that forever. Super cool, super cool being not only a WWE fan but a toy fan.
Well, one of the trends that kind of, seems to be kind of running through all toy collecting right now, whether regardless of brand or line or intellectual IP, is the phrase "what's old is new again." And while you guys recently closed the book on Masters of the WWE Universe, a very popular line, something especially with the reintroduction of He-Man and Masters of the Universe into kind of like the public sphere, you pivoted and kind of turned the line into more of a Remco inspired line. So tell us a little bit about the Superstars line and why you guys chose to go in that direction.
Yeah. So you mentioned the popularity of Masters of the WWE Universe, and I mean it's still performing incredibly well. It just has been consistently a solid performer. But just part of the retail flow, the retail way of doing things. Sometimes freshness is required or requested. So we knew that we were going to have to change things up here. And I did stretch it out as long as I could with WWE Masters. But it was time. There was no more fighting that I could do to keep it around. And being as successful as it was, I mean, it just made sense to attempt to still keep it alive in some way. And the way to do that was to just go straight up, vintage style wrestling figure like the old AWA line that you mentioned. And here we are. People are already stripping away the Motu gear on those figures anyway to create wrestling versions. So now we're just providing that. And they can still, Motu fans can still get these and Motuify them if they want to, because the parts are still swappable and all the accessories are still compatible. So I still think you're getting like the best of both worlds once again with this line. And then, I'm going to do it again. Shout out to the packaging team, because that's what ties it all together. That packaging, I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's like, that style guide artwork, that it was featured on like bed sheets and the ice cream bars, right there on the front. And once you guys see the back, there's little winks to the past that we threw in as well that are super, super cool.
That's been one of the most fun things with watching people collect that line is the kit bashing. So like, whether it's kit bashing them with other Masters of the WWE Universe figures, like I know people were buying like multiples of I think it was John Cena, because he had plain hands and things that were able to kind of spread out to some of the other characters, but also watching them kit bash them with the Origins figures. So like making like a wrestling version of Skeletor, and like it's just it that line, and I love that you called that out too, the fact that this new line is you're just adding more building blocks to this world that you guys have kind of created.
Shout out to Bill Beneke. He's a legend in the business, a designer. He designed our Mattel DC line for most of its run, and he was at Jax before that doing WWE stuff, and now he's our design manager here on WWE, and he's the one who implemented, kind of snuck in, hope that doesn't get anybody in trouble, kind of snuck in the swappability there, and that really, to me, like took the collectability and playability to the next level on both those Motu Origins figures and our WWE figures. It just like opened up so many possibilities, and like just seeing like parents actually sharing these with their kids, and kids like truly loving this form factor. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, and that custom like realm is something where it's just like you usually have to kind of almost like put in effort to do it, but the fact that that's just capable right out of the package is just amazing.
Oh yeah, I pre-ordered two of most of those figures because I just had ideas of how I needed a wrestler version and I needed a Motu version, so I'm doing it.
Yeah, no boil and pop necessary.
Right.
No. So we've been to WWE Eternia, and now we're headed to Hollywood. So where did the idea come from to create a line of superstars out of their ring as their on-screen personas in film and television?
I mean, I think this idea and this line was inevitable. WWE superstars, wrestling talent in general, have been synonymous with movies for our entire lifetime. I mean, Hulk Hogan and Rocky. You see all the great movies with the luchadors in Mexico, like megastars, and then of course all the way down the line, Roddy Piper, of course, who's featured here, Rock, who is the biggest star in the planet now. It's just natural to have that represented in action figure form in one way. And I will say, talking about that Roddy, a lot of this came from a former Mattel employee, Taylor. She was trying to get that Roddy done as a Comic-Con exclusive. And we hit a couple speed bumps and weren't able to make it happen. So I had that Roddy prototype in my cube at work for years, and I was always looking for an angle, a way to get it out. We do these mashups for Walmart, like Ghostbusters, and like those the zombie mashups and whatnot. So there was an appetite for some sort of mashup. So we started exploring Hollywood, and I was like, here's how I get this Roddy out finally.
So I would say that out of all of the things that have been announced at Comic-Con this over the past week, the two things that have kind of garnered the most questions, at least that we've seen on during our coverage, is around the Ultimate Ring and around the Hollywood line. So immediately, as soon as people started to see these characters, it's like, well, why do we have two characters from Fast and the Furious? Why don't we have I think Suburban Commando has come up several times in conversation, and countless other movies that feature whether they're WWE productions. I think Kane and See No Evil was another one that had come up. Is there so far? Is there kind of? I mean, we've noticed that the properties are NBC Universal properties in the six figures that have been announced so far. Is there any kind of limitation right now as to how these are selected or what's kind of on the table?
I will say that when we first started to explore this, I mean, the possibilities or ideas and concepts were wide open. We talked about everybody you guys would have thought of, and then some. But then reality comes into play, and you're trying to negotiate these deals. Given this is just going to be a six-figure line, I just want to set expectations there. This is kind of like the fall in and out lines that we do at Walmart. So the line itself, as it is, will not go beyond the six figures. So with that said, to accomplish this, we wound up having to go with one studio to do kind of like an umbrella deal to where we had multiple properties available to us. So Universal had the widest array of WWE related talent. So we went with Universal, and they've been great partners. And, there's some heavy hitter movies in there, from the present, like the Fast and the Furious franchise and Hobbs and Shaw. And then some, collector favorite things like Scorpion King and They Live Roddy, and that Andre the Giant from $6 Million Man. But with that said, not only given the reception of this and, just the plethora of ideas out there, it doesn't shut the door on more Hollywood figure executions. I think they just won't, live in this line if we're able to make those happen in the future.
Yeah, we could have named 24 wrestlers in movies. I don't think Dave or I thought of Andre the Giant and the $6 Million Man. That is such a random deep cut. Love it.
But boy, do I love it.
Yeah.
And
another shout out to Bill Benicky for that one. That was his baby. He was like, I'm doing this one. And we're like, let's make it happen.
Now, is any of that suit on that figure removable, or is he just permanently Sasquatch?
I haven't actually had it in hand yet. I mean, there might be some Velcro on the back. I'm not 100% sure. I think he just has like a brown or black body base underneath. TBD on that.
Gotcha.
So we've seen some. Speaking of amazing deep cuts like that, some amazing deep cuts from WWE and WCW history, like Zodiac, like the Goon, get announced at Comic-Con. Are there any more plans for more of those? I never knew I needed this until right now. Style of character.
I mean, that well is certainly not dry, right? Um, I mean, I'll say names, but it's not a confirmation that they're coming in any way. But just talking about possibilities, we have Kevin Nash, obviously Diesel under a deal, and he was Vinny Vegas and Oz, and we have Edge, who was a conquistador. We have Ric Flair, who was the Black Scorpion. I mean, there's just like so many possibilities there.
Who was
With
Jim
talent.
Neidhart was a weird one too for a while.
He was who?
Who? Yeah. Brutus Beefcake was that weird mask guy that would headbutt Earthquake. So Disciple, right? Disciple is still an option. So I mean, yes, I mean tons and tons. We could probably throw out names all day. That's the beauty of being repackaged in a new gimmick, right? More toy options.
Now, the other thing that we've seen where it's expanded the line were the Build-A-Figures, like Danny Davis, like Paul Ellering recently, and they've expanded to all the pay-per-view lines. So is there a possibility to see them expand beyond those lines and beyond characters? And the one thing that I have in mind that I mentioned even a while back on our show was Shotzi's Tank.
Man, guys, I just convinced management to let me expand it to pay-per-view, and you want more already.
It's never enough, Steve. Give us an inch. We want a mile, man.
Exactly. I'm not gonna lie. It wasn't happening for a while because it was tough, and I took baby steps approach to make it happen, like getting it into WrestleMania. Finding a reason why it needed to exist. WrestleMania, you want ultra strong sell through because it has to be fast because it's seasonal. So I squoze it into WrestleMania, and then hey, the other pay-per-view assortments fit the same bill. They're very seasonal, and they have special packaging that fits a specific time of year. So it worked for those. So let's get those out and start executing those. See some success there, which I'm sure they'll be successful. And then we'll keep talking and keep exploring. And yes, I do think, the possibility is totally open to different types of characters and different types of executions, because if you remember the flashback waves, they would have build-a-sets, which was a very cool concept. Unfortunately, that the line, didn't have the support it needed to continue, and dipped off before we can get to some of the cool sets that were planned. But like I said, it's something that we've done before, like out of the box build-a executions, and we can totally explore that again. I mean, we're doing a Kid Dominic, so
I was just gonna say you announced the Build-A-Kid.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
That was cool to see his reaction too. It's like, not only are you getting a figure of you now, but you're getting one of you from like a decade ago.
He was great. I think our copywriter Rob suggested Dominic for the panel, and I mean that was just an absolute yes, of a request, because we knew Dominic would be somebody that seeing these things would emotionally resonate with him, given he grew up in the industry and his dad is literally the most toyetic character maybe ever. Like, I mean, I would love to see a count. If any fans have a count of total figures out there, does anyone surpass Ray? Like, maybe not.
Probably not.
Yeah, he's a walking action figure. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it. And I was just gonna call out that having Dominic on that particular this most recent WWE Elite Squad kind of group that you guys had together for Comic-Con was fantastic. Between having, basically having Bianca critique the quality of the outfit on her new Elite figure because she makes her own outfits, and then having Dominic kind of recount literally his life in the business and how, it's being reflected through two new action figures. That was brilliant alone. Like, forget about the announcements for a minute, but just kind of having that stripped down, real moment with those two superstars was fantastic. It was worth watching the entire presentation just for those two moments.
I think like as a team, we try to craft things, whether it's a lineup or a panel, to have like a little something for everybody, right? So when you're looking at the panel, it's like you want star power, obviously, and Bianca, being who she is and main eventing WrestleMania really delivers that star power. You have fan favorites and people with history in the business, and you have a basically toy celebrity in Sergeant Slaughter, right? He made an appearance. And you want to make sure you have a widely appealing panel, because there's more eyes on this than just the action figure audience. You want to bring in a larger audience, and I think this selection of talent really delivered. Really emotionally resonating reactions from Dominic, Bianca with her eye of detail for the gear. I mean, Adam Cole he's one of us, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to call the guy a nerd, but that's not a bad thing, right? We're all nerds together, and he's a video game guy, and he was super into everything. And then of course you have Sam and Johnny anchoring it, bringing the true action figure collecting heat there. So I'm glad the sentiments were there, and what we intended came through to the viewers.
So speaking of sentiments, before we dive into a little bit of Q&A, we have a few questions that really we want to let you speak to your passion for what you do for a moment. If you could snap your fingers and make one series of figures based on your memories as a wrestling fan, what would be the theme of the series, and who would you include in it?
Oh my God. I get to make them, right? So, I had a list when I started, and it seemed daunting. Especially there's difficulties, right? There's different personalities and different points of view. And I was like, man, as I was trying to pitch things and make things happen, it just seemed like they never were. But then here we are. It's like my list has been obliterated and then some, and now I have new lists. So it is a tough question, because I am fortunate in that, I've been able to make a lot of the things that I wanted, that I also thought everyone else wanted, a reality. But I guess, if I had to do something like really special to me, I would maybe do like a Philadelphia Spectrum wave of figures, because that's the venue that I went to as a kid and saw WWF shows at the time. Beep that out if you have to. And my first show was Hulk Hogan versus the Big Boss Man in the main event. So I would of course have to throw those guys in there. And man, who else? I don't even know. Guys of that era, I think it would be an all golden age wave with various superstars that I saw at the Spectrum. Maybe toss in Demolition to get them back out there again with different face paint. What else could I do? Something different. Coco Beware, maybe, right? He was in tons of those matches at the Spectrum. And I think he had already transitioned to Akeem at the time, but I'm going to throw in my most desired figure, One Man Gang, into that wave as well.
Nice.
Very cool.
The Spectrum Showdown series.
Right.
And a great, wrestling city, especially for all of us being in the Northeast. But you always saw Spectrum stuff on TV. For us, it was MSG. So
I mean,
in the Meadowlands.
You being Northeast guys like me, like we were blessed as wrestling fans, because the Northeast is a hotbed for wrestling. Like we, fortunately, NWA and WCW, while it was still territory-ish, they crept up into the Northeast, and all the independent scene was super hot. And like the loops that the guys would go on, like I remember times like when I was finally old enough to drive, where I would just go to nonstop WWE shows like the entire weekend, like leading into Monday and Tuesday Raw and SmackDown taping. So it was a great area to grow up in as a wrestling fan.
Yeah, and we got World Class on TV and Global and all, just so much different stuff. It was awesome.
Those ECW shows on MSG.
ECW, of course.
Wild. Yeah, I remember discovering ECW and just my mind being immediately blown.
So, kind of piggybacking off of this, what's your favorite figure that you've worked on?
Ooh. Uh, the collector's edition. Well, I'm going to give you a couple names. I'm a tough person to ask for favorites for because I have a lot of favorites and they fluctuate. The collector's edition Sensational Sherry was super cool and special. I'm a big Sensational Sherry fan, and she she was the only woman at times in an all male dominated business, and was super tough and super respected. So I love that figure, and I always love that WrestleMania 6 look that she had. So that was one of the first figures. Well, Bill literally just came to me and said, "What are we going to do for Sherry now that we have her in a lineup?" And we talked about it, and we settled on that one. You kind of get a 2-for-1 manager Sherry and ring gear Sherry. Hollywood Hogan, another special one, because I was tasked with, presenting the business case of bringing Hulk back to our line. And that was a lot of work and mind blowing for me as, a golden age kid for wrestling. So we got Hogan back, and we got the long lost, basically, Hollywood figure out there. We've been off to the races ever since. So that one is very special to me. And maybe that first Ultimate Edition Warrior, because that was a line. Ultimate Edition line was a line that Bill McKean and I created. So to do someone who was special to me as a kid, Warrior, in a line that I helped create, that's super special.
Now, outside of wrestling figures, so like clearly, you're passionate. This is what you love to do. It's what you strive for, right? If you could work on any line, any type of figure, any property outside of wrestling, what would be the line that you would handpick?
I will once again give you 2 selections. Number 1 would be Masters of the Universe, which, I mean, I do get to dabble in with WWE Masters, and I do get to Mattel welcomed or unwelcomed into the Origins and Masterverse lines. But I would love a crack at really steering the ship on Masters of the Universe. That would be incredible. But something that is a little more out of the realm of possibility would be DC. I would have loved to work on DC. I think when the line was ending at Mattel, it was really getting its legs underneath it again, and amazing things were on the horizon. And I'm blessed to work with Bill Beneke now, who was the designer on that line. And it would have been really cool to dive in and just like pour, so much, love and attention and fan wishes into that line, and work with Bill to reinvigorate it and bring it to the next level.
Yeah, some of the last figures that came out in that that multiverse line were really special. I liked the particularly the, I guess you could say they were kind of Toy Biz inspired 89
Yep.
Batman and Joker. Those 2 figures especially. Yeah, really cool executions on those. It was, obviously, things change, and licenses and contracts move, but that definitely went out on a high note.
Yeah, I think so. We didn't even scratch the surface on what they were going to do. Obviously, I'm privy to some of that stuff, and it's heartbreaking what didn't happen. But hey, it is what it is, and maybe that day will come again.
Dave, you know what time it is?
Is it fan Q&A time, Erik?
It is fan Q&A time. So we posted a story up on our Instagram for our followers to submit questions. So some of these will come directly from specific people, and others will be kind of an amalgam of questions that are of similar ilk. So Dave, do you want to take the first one?
I will. So this one is one of those kind of amalgams. And it is there a particular reason that the Mattel Creations site is taking funds upfront for the crowd-funded Ultimate Ring?
Yes. Our particular credit card processor, I may be phrasing that incorrectly, but the company that handles credit card processing currently that's just their capabilities, is to take it up front. With that said, we are looking at ways to alleviate that before this crowdfund campaign ends. Fingers crossed by the time you listen to it that may have happened. So, please don't take this as an announcement if it didn't, but I mean, just know that loud and clear, it was heard. Some of us knew this ahead of time and voiced our concern, but reality, right? So we had to execute as is, but here we are. We're trying to still fix this, even as the campaign has already launched. We're trying to fix things and make a better experience for you guys. So bear with us, and we're going to try to make this work, well ahead of the campaign ending.
Sticking with the Ring and Mattel Creations, there were a lot of questions that, again, this is another one of those amalgam ones. Why people would like to know generally, why did you go with the new generation as opposed to something like the Attitude Era?
I think we had to find something that still had super wide appeal, but maybe, I mean, if you're going up in size and price, it seems to be unaccomplishable, right? You're already talking about something incredibly expensive to tool, and to develop and put together and manufacture in that light up neon entrance. So now when you're, I mean, just think of the immense size of those Attitude Era stages and beyond. And I mean, the numbers just, multiply rapidly. So I don't know that it would have been in anyone's best interest to go out of the gate with something that was, double, quadruple the price that we have now. I could be wrong, right? But it's tricky, right? Because once you go up in size for those tools, the price is really going to skyrocket. So we're seeing some sticker shock now with the price. I mean, I wonder what that sticker shock would be, for something that is much, 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 much bigger than what we're currently offering.
At times, a raker asks, is the plan for the retros to all be packed around a theme?
I think I touched upon this earlier. A loose theme, right? It would be great if the characters were from the same era, possibly. I think you'll see that at least for the first few waves. It doesn't mean we'll have to stick to that, like if we ever dive into modern talent, maybe we only sprinkle one or two modern talent in and balance those with some legendary talent. But I think at least for the first few waves, you're going to see some loose theming.
At the Berg 511 asks, how do you decide when to dive deeper into rosters from previous eras for your regular Elite Series figures?
We do want to try to include a legend in every wave. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But I want to make sure that there's an NXT talent, a legend, and a female talent in every single wave of elites. And sometimes, obviously that female talent might, blend into NXT or legends. But I mean, that's kind of how we construct things. We want to make sure we have waves with something for everybody. So as far as particular era goes, I mean, that, given we only have, it fluctuates between, 7 to 9 elite waves a year. I think we're just looking for something we haven't done before, something that's fan demanded. Obviously someone with enough popularity that they can live, in a larger way in mainline. So it's really just striking a balance between everything and trying to make sure that every era is well represented throughout the entire year in all our offerings. And that might just, it might be a crapshoot on maybe Legends has a ruthless aggression guy, but in mainline it's a golden era guy.
Now I actually have a question to follow up with that with. We've had people on from other toy makers. We kind of always make the joke that like every wave has to have a Batman, every wave has to have a Wolverine or a Spider-Man. do you guys, when you guys are crafting your waves of elites, obviously not the ones that are necessarily like pay-per-view themed, but just kind of the general waves, do you find that you try to have like an anchor personality or superstar in the wave?
Yeah, every wave has 1 to 2 anchors, and those are the figures that are usually heavily weighted in the case. Like if you crack open a fresh case, like if you were like me when I hunt at Walmart, sometimes I get there really late and the pallets are there, and that's a great time to find stuff. So then you crack open that case and you see some of those figures are, there's 2 or 3 of them in the case. Those are the anchors or your Batman style figures. So for us, for modern talent, those are your Roman Reigns or Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins and whatnot. And then your golden era guys, I mean, you know who they are: Warrior, Hogan, Macho Man. They'll be heavily weighted. So yes, it's very important because, we do get questions a lot. Why another Roman or why another Drew, right? I mean, those guys always sell a lot of units, and those guys make it possible to make the Goon or the Zodiac or, all these like tertiary characters who, we all want in our collections. But I mean, we're not going to move like, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of units of them. Right. So, I think, I do wish the line of thinking of like, oh, great, why do we get another so-and-so? Like, I mean, it's a blessing that those guys sell well and we can include them, because that just means we can keep it going with, all these other characters to build out our collections.
All the Goon marks just got really, really mad at you.
Sorry to break it to you guys. Goon is going to be fairly limited.
But yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense because these are the people that are on TV all the time. So, especially if you're thinking kids, like they're going to want a Roman, they're going to want an AJ, they're going to want a Seth.
And usually they have the strap too.
Exactly. And, when you even think about, someone who dabbles in collecting, and yeah, some people have collections of tertiary characters or, the hammerheads of the world. But, I think if someone is just like falling in love with the brand, it's like they're going to go to, your Batman level characters and have like, if you collect DC figures, you're going to get Batman and Joker, or maybe Robin, maybe a Superman, right? And the same thing applies for WWE. If you're going to have somebody who like, I'm getting into wrestling, I want a little bit of a wrestling collection, they're probably going to get, mostly A and B level, recognizability type talents.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, as somebody who, admittedly, like I've said it before on this podcast, that I got back into wrestling, during the pandemic and started buying, dabbling here and there in some wrestling figures, and the two things that have been an absolute, I for the lack of a better term, an absolute godsend for me have been some of those anchor characters. Like right now, I've been kind of fiddling with him the entire time we've been talking, but like I have the new SummerSlam basic Kane, because I wanted a modern Kane for my collection. And at $10, I have a Kane that does everything I need a Kane to do. That, he can pose his arms like he's doing the fire effects. He can choke slam people. We're good. We're in. Give the tombstone. We're in business. And he looks great. The deco's great. And he was easy to get. But like same thing, a few months ago, I wanted a Roman Reigns. I walked into Target and I had my pick of the litter. Same with Drew McIntyre, The Fiend, like the characters that are on TV, or excuse me, the superstars that are on TV, the talent that's on TV. It is that Batman rule, And as somebody who really has been getting into the figures recently, it does work. It makes it easy for me. So thank you.
And if you don't have those guys readily available within reasonable time frames, you shut the window on new collectors joining the hobby or new kids joining the hobby, right? It's just like, our dollar, we only have so many dollars and we also have short attention spans. So if I'm going to Target or Walmart or wherever for, a couple of months and I'm like, I really want Randy Orton and there's no Randy Orton, or I really want Roman Reigns, it's like eventually your attention might shift elsewhere and you start a different collection. It could start immediately if you don't find it that very day. I remember when I was a kid, I went into the store and I forget what I was really looking for, but they didn't have it. And I wound up getting G.I. Joes instead. And I was hooked on G.I. Joes after that. So I mean, it's very real, you know. So it's very important that these A-listers are present and readily available.
So our last one is from friend of the show at Blainer Things.
Oh no!
What do you do?
Mutual friend, Dave. We got to say mutual friend for this.
Yeah,
one.
mutual friend at Blainer Things. So what do you do to remind yourself of everything you have achieved and how far you've come?
I think it's keeping connected with collectors every single day, right? Because, you know, not only does it keep me grounded, you know, in this collector community that we're in, keep me informed, but allows me to get all that feedback and then bring it back into work and then see it come to life and deliver it to you guys. So it's just like, you know, it's just this relationship, you know, regularly reminds me of, you know, how lucky I am to not only be here and be able to, you know, have my vision, which I hope is most of your visions as well, come to life. But I don't know, it's very special, right? It's a very special community and a special relationship that, you know, I think, you know, some of us have, and I'll shout it out to some of the other guys, like, you know, like Ryan Ting and Jeremy Padower, and, you know, Brian at Super 7. It's like a lot of us are a little more plugged into the community than some of the other Wizard of Oz style people behind the curtain, you know, employees, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, you know, it definitely, like, you know, being so involved definitely, like, you know, regularly reminds me of, you know, how blessed this journey has been.
And with that, you have completed the Q&A. You have survived.
Whew, that I barely sweat.
And I have to say, to your last point there, as you know, you know, two guys who are collectors first, you know, all those names that you mentioned, you know, and yourself included, it means a lot to see that level of transparency. You know, especially when, you know, it's transparency is nice when everything is fine, right? And like everybody is, it's easy to get a thing, and there aren't any hiccups, there aren't any speed bumps, and, you know, transparency is just fine then. When it's really important is when there is I don't even want to say a problem, but let's say an area of opportunity, right, in the community, something that could have gone better, is great but could be better. That's when the transparency counts, and you do not shy away from that. You answer questions. You don't disappear. You don't hide behind, you know, a kind of fake answer or anything like that. It's awesome to see the level of transparency you provide to other collectors, and you know, hopefully through this you know, little podcast and you know, the other appearances that you make, people get that from you, because it's, to us, it's evident.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for that. And, you know, it is my pleasure, right? I know how I want to be treated as a consumer and a collector. And, you know, I know what others before me, their transparency did to properly prepare me for this. And, you know, I hope I'm giving collectors as good of an experience as I can, and maybe giving enough insights so that, you know, the next Jeremy or Ryan or Steve can come along and join us in this wild industry.
So, Dave, do you want to fulfill your role as this podcast's James Lipton and ask Steve our final question?
How else could we wrap anything up, Erik? So our final question to all of our guests, and I will add the the lower voice.
The timber.
For this.
I feel the timber.
Yeah. Our final question to all of our guests: what is your favorite and/or strangest piece in your collection? Now, it could be one of each. It could fall into that category. But your favorite and/or strangest piece in your collection.
Wow. I went to France maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and I found these weird stylized knockoff wrestlers, and there was like a whole line of them, and they look like claymation characters from like Wallace and Gromit. And there was one that looked just like Hulk Hogan, so I did pick that one up. So it's a weird Wallace and Gromit looking Hulk Hogan figure. I don't know where it is right now, but I know it's still in my possession somewhere. So I think that's the weirdest.
And do you have a favorite? What's your favorite right now?
My favorite right now, I mean, I've had it in my hands ever since I got the sample back from photography, is the Survivor Series Hulk Rules Hulk Hogan. I mean, I mentioned, when I first started, really getting into WWE and going to shows, it was that Hulk Rules era. So, I mean, this one, I have him posed right now in the bow and arrow pose. So that's definitely my current favorite at the moment, but I'm sure, not that I won't love this one just as much a few days from now, but as new samples come in and we have to review things and do photos, maybe something else will take his place as my favorite of the moment. Sorry, Hulkster.
Well, brother, I think that's a good choice. Yeah, I'm when I saw the pictures of that whole Survivor Series wave is excellent. But that Hulk, Dave and I were actually having the conversation where I said, I think that Hulk might actually be better than the Ultimate one, and he was we went back and forth. But yeah, it is a really good figure.
So many looks and so many eras. Like, I just feel like the demand is there. We're going to make them. We'll make them all. So, if one isn't for you, there's another one in the pipeline that you might like.
So, Steve, before we let you go, first of all, thank you again so much for taking the time to be with us, to answer questions, to deal with us fanboying out a little bit, marking out, I should say.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Where can we find you on the interwebs, and where can we find more from Mattel?
Yeah, I am on Instagram at Action Figure Attack, on Twitter, Action Fig Attack, on the Ringside Forums, Action Figure Attack. And for Mattel, follow Mattel Creations on Instagram. And don't forget to back the new generation Ultimate Edition Arena so we can unlock even more amazing crowdfunded executions.
Absolutely. Steve, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, dear listener, for hanging out with us today. Subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen, and then tell your friends to do it. Thanks also to Joe Azzari, the golden voice behind our intro. Our music is Game Boy Horror by the Zombie Dandies. Find more about them both in our show notes.
Follow us on social media at AIC_podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Stop by and say hi, show us your toy hauls, and share your toy stories. Maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode.
Don't try this at home. Void where prohibited and some assembly required. Each sold separately, not a flying toy. Consult a physician if your toy run exceeds more than 4 hours.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer, Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.